People do it. People do it all the time because it works.
Unfortunately, kasi mudslinging works.
Philippine politics has always been dramatic.
With the 2025 elections fast approaching, the political noise is only getting louder. But beyond the promises and posters lies something more troubling: mudslinging. Why do candidates, and even ordinary citizens, resort to it, even if it chips away at our democracy? In this episode, MB explains why political mudslinging distracts from the real issues. Mudslinging, as defined by Martin Haselmeyer, is a political strategy where candidates attempt to damage their opponent's reputation, often through what appears to be substantive criticism. This includes character assassination, using derogatory language, throwing shade, or spreading implied rumors about their opponent. Simply put, mudslinging is the act of saying insulting or damaging things about someone to tarnish someone's name. But how can we spot mudslinging when it happens? And when does it typically begin in the political process?
Political mudslinging technically means that the discussion makes a turn from issues to something personal. When the discussion, when the debate, when the argument make that turn from that context to something personal, then that already, whether it's good or bad, well, in political mudslinging, it's almost always bad, no? But if it makes that turn into something personal, then that's a cue already that the person may be engaging in political mudslinging.
In short, mudslinging starts the moment anyone shifts the conversation toward a person's private life instead of focusing on the issues. Why do individuals or political groups engage in mudslinging in the first place?
Unfortunately, kasi mudslinging works. It grabs public attention, it fuels name recall, it mobilizes supporters, and gets people talking. And not always in a bad way. For some politicians, attacking a rival is actually a strategy to boost their own image. No? In short, it's noise, but from a political communication strategy, it's a useful noise. Mudslinging can help candidate control the narrative. It distracts voters and the media from their weaknesses, from the candidate's weaknesses.
If a person already touches on not only the personal life of the other party, but on the personal emotional aspect of their supporters, triggering hatred or anger or disgust towards the other person, then it concretizes the support. People do it all the time because it works. Why does it work? No? Because, as I've mentioned a while ago, the nature of Philippine politics has always been dramatic.
Psychology professor Alison Ledgerwood and her colleagues point out that negative framing tends to stick more than positive ones. Our brains are hardwired to remember negative information. Throughout history, political mudslinging has proven effective. It captures the public's attention and distracts voters from the real issues. But why does it work so well? And why does it continue to pull us away from what truly matters?
Mudslinging works because it simplifies complex issues. So let's face it, for many of our voters, political decision-making can feel overwhelming. There's so much information, so many moving parts. So when a candidate turns the race into a battle of personalities between who's good and who's bad, it suddenly becomes easier to follow and way more relatable. This is where mudslinging becomes effective. Like what I said, it grabs attention, it entertains, and it helps build name recall. So in a system where visibility is important, then mudslinging is political currency. So it distracts us from real issue by making the unreal seem more engaging.
From a psychological perspective, researchers have found that people are more likely to focus on and give greater weight to negative information than positive, a phenomenon known as negativity bias. Given that mudslinging easily diverts attention from pressing issues, and that many Filipinos tend to gravitate more toward personal stories than policy discussions. Could public figures be using political mudslinging deliberately to distract us from urgent concerns like poverty, education, and healthcare?
When politicians resort to mudslinging, it's rarely accidental. It often serves a very specific purpose, and that is to control the narrative, to gain visibility, and basically shift the people's attention away from the topics that might harm them. I think politicians are very knowledgeable with how the media works and with how social media works. They understand that sensational stories, even the messy ones, make headlines and go viral.
People who join and participate in mudslinging are aware of it and done it intentionally. But are they also aware of the broader effects of this?
Since the strategy of political mudslinging is deliberately done, candidates, politicians who use it are very much aware. Again, they know that it works, they know that it will be effective, but some politicians may have to be cautious now, okay? Because what we are seeing now is that even if you have planned everything accordingly, it may backfire, no? Because now, in the context of politics today, the access, okay, of people to various sources of information makes it possible for us to verify, makes it possible for us to confirm.
Mudslinging kasi it's a trade-off, is a short-term and a long-term trade-off. It may deliver short-term wins, but in the long run, it's bad news for the health of our democracy. It's trade-off between short-term attention and long-term damage to democracy. So the danger is that in the race to win votes, we might be losing something bigger. And that is, the very spirit of Philippine democracy.
And because political mudslinging works, and we might lose the spirit of our democracy, we need to know how to recognize whether an attack against an opponent is grounded in fact, or if it's simply a false accusation. But how can we identify it? Assistant Professor Ignacio shares that there are a few ways to tell. First, when the discussion turns personal, that alone is already a cue that the conversation may be veering into political mudslinging. Second, two extremes. If the statement is too vague, like claiming someone is corrupt without offering any clear evidence. While the other extreme is if it's very personal or specific. Lastly, if the statement becomes exaggerated to the point that it resembles fake news.
Spotting the difference between fact-based criticism and mudslinging requires effort, but it starts with one thing: knowing the facts. No? That means going beyond the news headlines. It means checking credible sources, following in-depth political analysis, and watching debates where candidates are pressed on the important issues. So the more context you have, I think, the easier it is to tell if mudslinging or an attack is grounded in truth or just thrown to provoke.
Fact-checking, looking for credible resources, and watching debates will help us determine whether the information is true or not. But what role can voters play in educating others about the dangers of mudslinging and promoting more informed political discussions? Professor Gloria says voters should be active participants, not just passive consumers. We need to demand substance from candidates, ask the tough questions, and push past all the noise. Professor Ignacio adds that our responsibility starts with educating ourselves and that we should dig deeper, validate, and infer. He also said we should not engage in political mudslinging, and whenever we see someone doing it, we should call their attention.
I think mudslinging isn't going away. Negative campaigning has been part of our political discourse ever since. But instead of trying to stop it completely, we should focus on how we can respond to it.
It's difficult to stop this practice, no? Because it has been very effective for so many people. But it doesn't mean that we should allow it to continue.
Political mudslinging may never fully disappear, but that doesn't mean it should go unchallenged. It doesn't mean people will stay silent. Because change doesn't start in silence, it begins with awareness, with action, and with those who dare to demand better. Whether an ordinary citizen, a public servant, or a politician, everyone has a role to play. The system isn't just something to observe, it's something that can be shaped.